It's time to get into our Sunday showdowns where we will preview the fantasy start, sits, and sleepers in every game this Sunday throughout the hour, starting with a game that we expect to be a fountain. Just a wealth of fantasy points between the Vikings and the Seahawks. Marcus, give us a must start here.
A must start is DK Metcalf. I mean, the Seahawks' main wide receivers, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, have been on fire this year, but Metcalf is tied for second in total receiving yards so far this season, top 10 amongst all receivers in total air yards. You're talking about a guy who's a deep threat, who plays with a quarterback who's maybe the best deep ball thrower in the league. Minnesota, one of the worst defenses on throws 10 or more yards beyond the line of scrimmage. Everything in this matchup is set up for DK Metcalf to go out and smash.
Well, Marcus, you say DK Metcalf. I'll raise you a Justin Jefferson here. And I'll say this young receiver has come on the last 2 weeks, 22.4 fantasy points. But it's a Seattle Seahawks defense that's given up all the yards that we're excited about. I can't wait for people to put him in the lineup. And again, I think he's going to be one of the top young guys, kind of taking over what Stephon Diggs was able to do in Minnesota last year.
Yeah, the rookie doing big things these last couple of weeks. Let's go over to Giants-Cowboys. Adam Reck, tell us why you see big things from Rayne Dakota Prescott.
Well, I still believe that he's going to come out and have a big game, even though if you look at his production this season, if you took only his second half points, he would be the QB6. And so you wonder, are they going to have enough, are they going to have to fight back in this game? They're playing the Giants, you shouldn't expect them to be down. But you know what? Jason Garrett, revenge game. So give me all the shares of Dak Prescott.
So maybe Jason Garrett's going to show that he can go out and win with a different quarterback, which is why I like Daniel Jones. It's kind of a deep sleeper this week. The Giants are more than likely going to need to throw the football if they're going to stay in this game with the Cowboys. The Dallas pass defense has allowed 12 touchdowns with just 1 interception. They're struggling to consistently get pressure on the quarterback, which is good news for Jones. And oh, by the way, Daniel Jones is actually 4th among quarterbacks when it comes to rushing yards. So he is picking up because of that. I mean, partially because he's been in trouble and having to run. But whatever. We don't care how it happens. It happens. He's getting those rushing yards for you.
The best thing about a double revenge game, the narrative wins no matter what. Speaking of defenses that are nice to offenses, let's go to Carolina and Atlanta, where managers who started the season by handcuffing Mike Davis to CMC, probably feeling pretty good. And now he's got a defense that is far and away the worst that he's played against in this run of playing for Christian McCaffrey. I'm feeling confident in a 30-point game from Teddy and the gang. I think Mike Davis gets in a couple of scores of his own on that.
Yeah, well, I have a sleeper for everyone here, and it has little to do with what this guy's done all year, but Ian Thomas. And the reason is this defense gave up 3 touchdowns to a tight end last week, Bob Tonin. And so why wouldn't I try to be a little aggressive here, especially at this tight end position, which hasn't been given as much points as we expect, to try to go out and get maybe they haven't fixed their issues with the tight end. So Ian Thomas is the guy that I have as a sleeper.
The Bengals and the Ravens in the AFC North. Rank, what are your thoughts on Joe Burrow?
You know what? If you read my stardom sit-em column, I personally have Joe Burrow as a sit-em. But for me, I guess the personal part is here. The matchup is bad. This is an on-paper thing that is terrible. But you know what? I don't care about any of that. I've been watching Joe Burrow very closely going back to last season at LSU. And this is an opportunity where he could go out and throw 5 picks. I just don't think that this young man is capable of such things. So I am going to say, matchup be damned. I am getting Joey Burrow into my lineup. And I tell you, when he crushes it this week, drop all your other quarterbacks because Joey Burrow is going to be your guy.
This feels like it's still part of breaking the ranks because I'm saying beware of Joe Burrow this week. The Ravens allowed 4 passing touchdowns to Patrick Mahomes, but in their other 3 games, they've allowed just 2 passing touchdowns. Mahomes is the only quarterback to score over 20 fantasy points against them this week. So I'm viewing this week as kind of a big test for Joe Burrow. And if he passes and has a really strong game, I agree with Rank. You could start him every week moving forward. But until then, I'm not ready to say he's matchup proof yet.
Don't be scared.
Big test against the Ravens. Let's go over to the Eagles and the Steelers. Pittsburgh is coming off that surprise bye week, right?
Yeah, and again, this goes back to another terrible matchup. But I look at Miles Sanders, and he's had at least 14 fantasy points in every game this season. He's had at least 75 scrimmage yards as well. The Steelers, though, are really weird. They've allowed the second fewest fantasy points to running backs this season, except the Steelers have had 3 running backs score at least 12 points against them this year. And I think of the depleted weaponry of the Eagles, and I just expect them to go to Miles Sanders an awful lot. And I think that he's going to be able to get you double-digit points. So I say that you have to start him.
Yeah, I think you still start Miles Sanders this week, and I also think you start Deontay Johnson this week against the Eagles defense. Deontay Johnson leads the Steelers in target and air yard share this year, not Juju Smith-Schuster, and he's already flashed his upside this year. We've seen him score 23 points in week 2, and I know the Eagles, on paper, it's a middle-of-the-pack matchup for wide receivers, but I still think the way to attack that defense is through the air because they're still very strong against the run game.
Not as much a geographical rivalry, but a team rivalry in KC as the Raiders come into town. Florio, give us a must start.
I'm saying must start Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week, and I know you may be saying, yeah, we know to start him, but he is legitimately my RB1 this week, my highest ranked running back, because the Raiders defense is allowing the most fantasy points and touchdowns to running backs so far this season. They've allowed 28 or more 3 times already, and CEH has a good chance of doing that himself this week as he's getting plenty of opportunities, 16 or more touches in every game this year. Already twice has had 25 touches in a game, and that's a lot of opportunity in the best offense in football.
And because CEH and company are going to go off, I think you get Hunter Renfrow in a situation where the Raiders will need to throw and need to score. He's gotten more and more targets with Ruggs out. Now, Ruggs was a full participant in practice, but I still think Hunter Renfrow is going to see a good share of footballs to get around the 15 points you might be looking for if you're against a bad matchup for your other receivers. We got the Colts and the Browns. Marcus, what do you see here?
I've got Zach Pascal as a sleeper in this one, and I know it's been hard to really trust anybody in this Indianapolis passing game this season, but Pascal has upside because he's working primarily as the slot receiver, playing 51% of his snaps from the slot this year, and Cleveland has struggled against guys lining up in that spot. They've given up the second most yards, the most touchdowns to slot receivers, so if the Colts can play the matchup, I think they can get some favorable ones and get the ball to Pascal.
I'm going to say to sit Odell Beckham Jr. And let me just say that I love OBJ. I'm a huge fan. I love him, but you can also love the player, but not love the matchup. Like, I love sushi. I don't like it for breakfast. So this week, I'm going to pass on OBJ. And again, with any advice we're giving out here, I implore you to go check out the rankings before you make your final decision. This is one that I saw Michael F. Florio put out there that I absolutely agree with. So just check the rankings before you make that final call.
All right, I have to disagree. If it tastes good at 12, it is going to taste good at 8 in the morning. Anyway, McVay traveling back to his old stomping grounds in D.C. Florio, who are you starting here?
I'm going to start Antonio Gibson, and I apologize for those who listened to me last week and sat him because in a tough matchup against the Ravens, he went out and had a season high in touches, targets, catches, and fantasy points. He has scored a touchdown in 3 straight games. The Rams are middle of the pack against running backs in terms of fantasy points allowed. So I think Gibson this week is an RB2 or a flex option that you can trust.
Well, Florio, I'm going to say start the Rams defense. And the reason being is this offensive line is giving up a ton of pressure if you watch the last game against the Baltimore Ravens. And Aaron Donald seems like anytime he doesn't have a big day, he comes out and does this. So the Rams defense are getting Terrell Lewis back. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey's going to cover and probably shadow Terry McLaurin. I just think the Rams defense, they're going to get some interceptions here. And it's going to be a crazy game. And by the way, I'll be calling it too at 10 a.m. So if you hear me, holler at your boy.
Arnold, Sunday showdowns for everybody, starting with NJD's Jags against the O'Brien-less Texans. Marcus, do you have any good news for Jags fans?
For Jags fans, I don't know. But for Texans fans, I'm telling you that Deshaun Watson is a must start. Maybe that's not so good news for Jacksonville fans. I'm not sure. The matchup is just okay on paper, but it is for me, it is what you heard Adam Rank and Mike Florio talk about earlier in the show, that this is really a situation where I think the Texans just decide they're going to put the ball in the hands of their best player and let him go out and make plays. And I think anybody who starts Deshaun Watson should reap the benefits.
Everybody has the Jags getting trounced by the Texans. Let's look over to the Dolphins-Niners. MJD, what you doing here?
I'm going to start Raheem Mostert. And He started off fast, had the knee injury, and if he's active enough as it seems he's trending to be, I'm going to play him. I think the Niners offense is going to be so much better with Jimmy Garoppolo in there, as well as Mostert being that guy that, you know, the last time we saw him, he took the first carry 80 yards. I need more of that.
All right, let's go finally to the Cardinals and the Jets. And yes, we're doing it again. One of us is demanding those of you who have Kenyon Drake to put him in your lineup. This time, it's a must against the Jets defense that's giving up over 30 points a game to opposing running backs. The Cardinals have lost a couple of games in a row. It's a get-right game. Might have a solid flow for running backs unless you expect big things from Joe Flacco on the other side. Expect a lot from Kenyon Drake.